Hello, 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 hello. You got it. This is Janine LaRue again with the LaRuelist Cafe. And we are live today with a man who I call my friend. And when I think about this particular guest we have today, I think about this song. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. I don't own the rights to this song, but I love it. And we're going to listen to a couple of bars of it. Not a whole lot, but a couple. So we're back with delays. And from what I understand, it is Firefox. So Firefox has shut down a couple of times, and we'll see if it will hold on until the end of this show. Our guest today, when I think about this particular guest, I think about 9/11. He was the Secretary of State, and they called on him to do that walk. After 9/11, we were all so very proud of him as he represented our state. I also think about the whole issue with our Rutgers, the Rutgers basketball team, the Don Imus situation when he called our beloved basketball players nappy-headed hoes, and how he came to the governor's mansion and negotiated among Imus and the basketball players and the parents of those young ladies. When I think about this particular guest, I think about how he was one of the healing voices when we lost our beloved Whitney Houston. Every time I turned on that TV, I saw this particular man sitting there, healing not just the nation, but it was being aired internationally. And the last thing when I think about this guest, I think about my own soul. Because yes, I am not 5 feet tall and I don't play basketball, but he baptized me along with the Rutgers basketball team. I am talking about none other, and I call him one of the best looking ministers in this, not just in the state of New Jersey, but in the country. But it's not his good looks. It is the words that he brings forth to all of us. And let me tell you, in days like when the technology doesn't work, or when things are going downhill, or when racism seems to be just a muck, when you have a pandemic, there's one person that you will want on your side. And his name is none other than the Reverend Dr. DeForest B. Soaries. Let's bring him on. So you thought I wasn't going to get it together, didn't you, Pastor?
Janine LaRue, only you. Now you're a producer, director, organizer. It's just marvelous. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine. I can see you fine. And I am so glad to have you as a guest here on LaRuelist Cafe. And you know what? I began playing that song, My Soul's Been Anchored in the Lord, is one of my favorite songs. And I understand you know a little bit about the author of that song.
Well, it's so funny. You know, before we built our new church, we would have these week-long revivals in the old church. And that's where you got baptized, isn't it?
I got baptized, yes, in the old church, yes.
The old church. And H. Beecher Hicks, great preacher from Washington, D.C., was our preacher for the week. And I came in one night for a revival service and looked up at the organ, and who was sitting there but Douglas Miller. I didn't know Douglas Miller at all. I knew a lot of gospel artists, but I did not know Douglas Miller.
Yeah, brother.
He had heard about me. He was in the area. He heard we were having revival, and he just decided to stop by, and he sang that song, My Soul is Anchored in the Lord.
Yes.
And, I didn't hire him to come, but I paid him a little love offering for being there.
Well, that's one of my favorites.
I play it regularly. He was a great guy. He did a
And
great
see
job
that?
with
I
it.
didn't even realize that. But it was just a song, with all of the LaRuelist Cafe shows, I always have a song that we got to do.
That's a
And I
great
don't know
song.
why, when I hear that song, I think about you.
That's a great song. How long have you been doing this broadcast?
Well, you know what? I've been doing it now since the beginning of April.
Ah,
I went out and bought all of this fancy equipment, paid a lot of money for it. And I was going to do, the headphones, the big mic, everything, the board. And as soon as I was ready to do the first show, the pandemic hit.
right,
And nobody was coming face to face with anyone. In fact, we were shuttered in.
right,
So I found out that there was another system where I could actually do this live from my home studio.
right.
And you are the 23rd show.
Wow. Well, listen, I
23rd show.
admire you because not everybody can shift into this new normal. Not
Right.
everybody is as effective doing things virtually as they are live. But you are the master of adaptation. You
Gotta
are
do it.
you are the queen of innovation, and you've helped a lot of people, and you still are doing so. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And one of the things that's good about this platform, it will stay on YouTube as well as Facebook and my website, LaRuelistCafe.com.
That's
So
great.
people will be able to watch it forever. And they do.
That
And
is
they
great.
So, you know what? Before we had the murder of George Floyd, here we were in this pandemic. And I know that you serve on a board of directors, a corporate board of directors for the largest healthcare system in the state of New Jersey.
Right.
I'm wondering, Pastor, what have we learned about this pandemic as it relates to various groups of people?
My goodness, what haven't we learned? We've learned, I think, as a society, as a world, that life is fragile. That's one thing we've learned. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter how rich you are, how much education you have. There are certain things that can turn your life upside down quickly. And this virus has proven to be that. Second thing we've learned is that it is completely possible for the entire world to face the same challenge. It hasn't happened in 100 years. When there are wars, those wars affect the people in the conflict. When there are floods and hurricanes, we kind of watch from a distance. When there are insurrections in American cities, the people around the world look at us. But I think this virus was such a common threat to all of humanity that at the very least, it helped us understand that we are more in common in our diversity than we have apart. The other
Mm.
thing I think it has revealed is the weakness of the healthcare system. Before COVID-19, there were a million vacant nursing jobs available. And that's why, while many of our people in cities are unemployed, we look all over the world for nurses because we don't have enough nurses, which means that if you just put COVID-19 aside, we could really solve a lot of our structural economic challenges in Black communities if we start in fifth grade and sixth grade and start recruiting young men and women and say, look, in 10 years, you can be a nurse. So I think we've got to become more proactive in
Mhm.
developing skill sets and people to match the job opportunities. Then, of course, we saw the disparities that exist in the healthcare system, particularly as it relates to Black people. And I think COVID-19 forced us to reckon with the reality that access to healthcare, that pre-existing conditions that persist seem to proliferate among Black people. And see, Janine, I'm just old enough to not be afraid to use the word Black. We'll talk more about
Right.
this, but we talk about diversity. We talked about affirmative action. We talk about inclusion, but all of those principles are based on the struggles and the circumstances of Black people. And what I'm afraid of is that when we talk about people of color and we talk about Black and brown, somehow Black people always end up on the short end of the stick. And I think COVID-19 set the table, and George Floyd served the meal of having to focus on the Black community. Because after all of these years and all of this legislation, and electing all of these officials, Black people are still at the bottom of every indicator of things good and at the top of every indicator of things bad.
So one of the things that we talked about earlier, can we dig out? And I'm going to ask you that question from time to time. We're at the bottom of a lot of these areas as Black people. Can we dig out? And if we can, how do we do this?
Well, our history says we can dig out. We dug out of the pit of slave ships that packed us in the bottom without sanitation, without water, without clean air. And somehow we dug out, we survived. We dug out of slavery. We dug out, Thomas Jefferson was the father of democracy with all of his lofty principles. But we found out that Thomas Jefferson owned 600 slaves and had a mistress who was a slave with children that he denied. But we dug out. We dug out of Jim Crow. So but when you look at how we dug out, the first thing we have to say about digging out, you have to realize that you have to dig out. And I think after the civil rights movement, many of us had the illusion of not having anything to dig out of. And I think that's where you start. We have to start by understanding the nature of the problem. And see, the George Floyd video did two things. It awakened white people to the reality that our concerns about police were, as you remember, Peter Venero, when we talked about racial profiling, he had a press conference and said, well, I have to admit, racial profiling is real and not imagined. And what the video of George Floyd did was help white people, good white people, I mean, my white friends, realize that we are not imagining exactly the stress that we feel when a police car pulls us over. So for Black people, a lot of Black people needed to be reminded that when a police car pulls you over, they don't care if you got a PhD from Rutgers or if you live in public housing. And a lot of Black people were reawakened to the reality of what it means to be Black in America. So once we size up and recognize that we're in a pit, then we certainly can dig ourselves out. We dig ourselves out by cooperating with each other. We dig ourselves out by being strategic and not emotional. We dig ourselves out by doing for ourselves what we're able to do and creating relationships with people outside of our community that can help us. This COVID-19 resulted in a big stimulus package coming from Washington. And part of that stimulus was a payroll protection program that funded businesses to close gaps. Well, a lot of us didn't get into that loan. And some of it was because the big banks behave a certain way. But some of it was because we have not learned how to develop banking relationships. And I got 3 PP loans. I got one for my church, one for my nonprofit, and one for my personal business because I called people who I was in relationship with. We've got to form relationships with people outside of our community so that we can access the resources to use inside our community.
Well, I know you have a program on financial literacy.
Yes, ma'am.
And we really, really need to get folks to start signing up for your seminars, because one of the things, a lot of the folks who are coming to me, they were trying to figure out how to get some of the money. They said, Janine, they said that I got to have a relationship with someone at a bank. Well, I'm funding everything out of my paycheck, working this as a business. I said, well, it's a little late in the game for them to believe you at this particular time. We're in the middle of a pandemic. They got to be able to trust that they're going to get the money.
Yeah, you have to know the system and learn the rules and then win by the rules. As my former boss, Jesse Jackson, always says, when the playing field is level and the rules are public, we can win. And the fact is, there's certain rules that drive economics. Of course, systemic racism is real, and I think America is now awakening to the fact that, Aunt Jemima, for instance, represents a kind of symbolism that reinforces a stereotype that is injurious to the mental health of Black people and to the common sense of white people. And so we have all of these images that we live with, and to be Black in America means basically to suck it up most of the time, choose your battles wisely, get up earlier, work harder, stay later, and then be treated as less than equal. That's been our plight. And now I think white people are open to listening, and we have to just go ahead and tell them the truth.
Well, that's the other part of it, telling the truth. Because I cannot tell you, and I know you've been in a lot of rooms where you're the only one who looks like you. And I've been in a lot of rooms where I'm the only one in the room who looks like me. And there were years together, you and I were showing up in rooms, and we were the only two in the rooms looking like each other.
Right.
And it is about speaking truth to power. We must learn to do that. I always cringe when I hear some of my white friends say to me, well, Janine, I wonder if they did that because she's Black. Well, if you know that people do things to people because they're Black, only the non-Black speaking up can make a huge difference in that situation.
Yeah, that's true. I think the education system has failed us significantly because, for instance, I was talking to some of my friends in Oklahoma. I'm going to Oklahoma next year to help celebrate or commemorate the 100th anniversary of the race riot. And in Oklahoma, the race riot was white people being violent and Black people being victims. And there are children who grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who were never taught that white people burned down the Black Wall Street section of Tulsa in 1921. Same thing is true of New Jersey. Our friend Bill Payne, God bless him, he struggled for years to get an Amistad Commission in New Jersey to teach Black history, particularly the history of Black people in New Jersey, to New Jersey students. We honored Ken Gibson in our church a couple of years before he died.
Oh, wow.
And the people in Central Jersey didn't realize that Ken Gibson was the first mayor of a major northeastern city. So Black people don't know our own history.
Right.
And the school systems don't teach it, but white people need to know it. And I think today, as this new season of awakening seems to have occurred, as we are watching our young people across racial lines rise up and demand respect, I think it's a new opportunity while you and I are still involved to bring about some new changes, make some more progress. The good thing about America is that we have these lofty ideals, which we've never lived up to, but it gives us something to strive for. And to the extent that we have white friends and other friends who are willing to fight for justice, not just for Black people, but for a just society, then I think we'll continue to struggle and we'll make progress along the way.
I remember back in the day, I grew up in Woodstown, New Jersey. And I mean, that's all the way almost to Delaware Memorial Bridge.
Right.
And I was not allowed at the movie theater. We had to sit up top. They didn't clean upstairs.
Right.
People smoked up there. Downstairs was carpeted, air conditioned, absolutely beautiful. And we couldn't buy a house on the main street of Woodstown. And one year, a Black family got in the pool. I think the father was actually a doctor. Family got in the pool to swim. And as soon as those kids got in the pool, they drained the pool, started draining of the kids in the pool, and everybody had to get out, and they were told they could no longer come to the pool. Well, I mention that because last week, Woodstown had one of the most magnificent Black Lives Matter parade, march. And I saw all of these white people, young people.
Right.
And the one thing that touched me was a little girl about 14 years old. And she said it with such emphasis with her little mask on. She said, no lives matter until Black lives matter. And I'm thinking, Woodstown, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
But see, what's different today is that these kids, although they don't know the horrors of the past, they grew up watching Bill Cosby and dancing to Michael Jackson. White people buy more rap music than Black people. They've seen newscasters. They've seen movies. They've seen Black people get all kinds of awards. You know, they've seen shows like Scandal, where Kerry Washington was just ruling the TV
Yeah,
set.
everybody wanted to be her.
So a lot of these white youth didn't know how bad it was for Black people. They hang out with Black people. They dress like Black people. They do Black dances. You know, they got white friends on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And so when they saw this police officer, George Floyd, was beneath his knee, these young white people were horrified because they thought guys like Al Sharpton were just ambulance chasers. You know, they thought NAACP was just had a chip on their shoulder. They didn't understand. But that video, that 17-year-old child that took that video, she should get an Image Award. She should get a Congressional Medal of Honor, because that did for white people what the 1963 demonstration did in Birmingham, Alabama, when Bull Connor got those German shepherds and had those fire hoses on women and children.
Yes.
And when America saw that, and America saw the brutality against peaceful protesters who just wanted to vote and work downtown and eat a sandwich at Woolworth's, that's when America awakened, and we had legislation, civil rights legislation, voting rights legislation. So I think this video of George Floyd can have the impact of the TV coverage of Birmingham in 1963.
And you know what? It's changed the world. It's changed the world. You know, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, going back to the pandemic and also talking about implicit racism. During the time that we were all shuttered in, because my being 70, I would only go grocery shopping every 10 days because Whole Foods stopped for a while delivering in Trenton.
Right.
And when I went grocery shopping, I looked at the long line of people at the cash register. They all looked like me. Now here I am. I'm nervous. I want to get there at 7 a.m. I only want to stay no more than 22 minutes in here because I don't want the virus. And then I'm looking at these people who are there 8 to 10 hours.
Right.
In it. And then I looked at the, when they were talking about social distancing, and you're looking at the subway, those who are essential employees, and they're on the subway and they're all standing up and shoulder to shoulder with it, no social distancing.
Right.
And it goes on and on and on. Moving forward, I mean, because they're the heroes too. Those folks are as much of the heroes
really
as the doctors and the nurses and the police and all, because they helped us. I wouldn't have eaten if they decided they weren't going to work.
Right.
We need to look at a strategy to address these folks who were the essential employees making no money, who had to be there or they were fired.
That's the key. If Black folks stayed home, America would shut down. But justice includes making sure people are compensated for the work they do and the value of that work. And for too long, we have had a country, a two-tiered system. You know, a white family, a white single-family family with no college degree has a higher median income than a Black two-parent family with a college degree. The economic disparities are just staggering. And while most poor people are white, the highest percentage of any race that's poor is Black. A third of Black people are living in poverty. 45% don't have $400. 36% have a negative net worth. I mean, Black people are stuck, and they're stuck not because we don't work hard, but we're stuck because we've inherited a legacy of injustice and unfairness, and we have not had the resources or the capacity to ever catch up.
Mm. Well, let me ask you one thing. Of catching up does mean actually exercising our civic responsibility of going to the polls.
Right.
I'm very concerned about this year's election from a lot of areas. One is we're pretty much vote by mail right now.
Right.
And I got my ballot in the mail yesterday, and LaRuelist is going to run a program on vote by mail because it's complicated. The vote by mail, the envelopes, what gets signed, where you sign it, how you return, what you keep, it is not as simple as people think. That's number one.
It's not at all.
Number two, a lot of us are not going to return those envelopes.
Right.
We're not going to do it. What would we say to let people know how urgent this year's election is?
Wow. I mean, it's almost, it should be self-evident of how urgent an election is, and not just the federal election, but all elections, because the government controls social programs and their funding. The government controls whether or not people, when they're having a tough time, can get food to eat and have a place to live. I saw a statistic that talked about how much more money we spend on police than we spend on affordable housing. That's government policy. I don't, you know me, I'm one who does not believe that government can fix all of our problems, but there's a role for government. Government decides which playgrounds are nice playgrounds in which part of town you can have a leisure life in. Everything from our highways to our playgrounds to our schools to our military to our budget, it comes from government.
Exactly.
The government makes those decisions, and we not only should vote, but we have to stay engaged to hold government officials accountable. You see, I don't get angry at people who serve their constituencies.
Right.
I get angry when the other people, like in your town, in Trenton, the voter turnout is so low. You can't get mad at the people who win. You have to get mad at the people who don't vote.
Who don't vote.
I mean, Trenton has one of the lowest voter turnouts of any city in America.
It is disgraceful.
It is
absolutely disgraceful.
So how can you complain about the police? Look at Atlanta. This young lady in Atlanta, Mayor Keisha, because she is the mayor, when she saw police brutality, she fired the guy right away.
Right away.
And look at the prosecutor, because he's Black.
Yes.
He brought charges, the right charges, within days.
Right.
So voting matters. I'll tell you something else that matters. But you have to be registered to vote, and that's jury duty.
Exactly.
If the criminal justice system never has us on the jury, then we're asking them to make decisions about our young people when they face the courts. So we've got to be. That's what I love about you, because you have been an advocate for involvement and engagement.
It's critical.
It's absolutely critical. I'll tell you something else about voting we don't talk about enough. Even if your candidate loses, and you know this because you've been on the inside, neighborhoods that vote get more respect from the governments, local, county, and state government, than neighborhoods that don't, because there are people who study voter turnout. And if your neighborhood has a very low voter turnout, and they put up a map on the wall, and they realize that the people there don't vote, that means they don't have to care about you. They don't have to care about garbage pickup. They don't have to care about snow removal. They don't have to care about schools. They don't have to. We are not respected in this country if we are not registered and don't vote.
Well, let me tell you something else. You mentioned if your candidate loses. Now, you remember that back with the Jim Florio days, my candidate lost. Jim Florio was my governor. He had appointed me to the Casino Control Commission. Right. Now, one of the things that I figured out very quickly, 4 years is a long time.
That's right.
You better figure out how to work with people who are in office. Now, I don't know that I could ever work with the gentleman at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So now I got to find other people I got to learn to work with. But I found a way to work with your governor, Governor Christine Todd Whitman.
My governor.
Oh, well, because you were her Secretary of State.
She loved you. Christy Whitman loved Janine LaRue.
Oh my goodness, I had more access to her administration than I did probably to any administration except John Corzine because I was a part of it.
Right.
But I found a way to work with her, and Jim Florio is my
right.
But there's nothing personal
about.
But you don't have personal friends in politics. You have personal issues in politics.
That's right. That's right. You know, that's something that you and I have had in common since we've met.
Yeah.
I find that too many African Americans are not strategic in dealing with politics. We are more emotional. And, you know, there was a congressman from Missouri who coined the phrase, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, but permanent interests. Congressman Bill Clay, who coined that phrase. And while we say it, we don't actually mean it. I will work with anybody if the outcome of our working together can be a benefit to the Black community.
I am totally there. So let's move on to this landmark. I never thought I would live to see it. Landmark, 11 charges yesterday down in Atlanta. What is your take on this, Doc?
Well, first of all, thank God for these phones that have cameras. And thank God for the body cameras. You know, Reverend Jackson led the Black Ministers Council in New Jersey fighting for body cameras on the state police. And body cameras protect both the police and the public. But were it not for cameras, this young man, Mr. Brooks, would have been dead. They would have described him as having resisted arrest, attacked the police. Even with the camera, they're saying he attacked the police. You can see the man running away. He was shot twice in the back. The autopsy said it was murder, yet his attorney is arguing that he attacked the police. How can you attack somebody running away from them? And so I think, to your previous point, having a mayor like Keisha, having a prosecutor in office at this time, understanding not just the law, but understanding the culture, we've come a long way.
We've come a long way.
At least in Atlanta.
Exactly. Well, I do know, because as I tell people, full disclosure, I do represent the Fraternal Order of Police in New Jersey, the state group on communications. Yeah. And what I'm happy about is that now they are coming to the table, and I know we have a meeting tomorrow. They want to look at police reforms. Because, you know, we're not saying that all police are bad.
Oh, no.
But you and I have spoken about this. When you talk about systemic racism, we're not saying that individual white people are racist. We're talking about the system. When we talk about the culture of the law enforcement, we're talking about the culture of things that are acceptable that should not be.
That's exactly right. And when it's in the culture, it's passed along informally. There's no class on it. There's no textbook. That's the problem we had with my governor, Governor Whitman, because he did not believe that New Jersey State Police practiced racial profiling. Why? Because she looked at the manual, and there was nothing in the written manual that they used to train. And so when she didn't see it in the manual, she just naively said, we don't do it. But then when we pressed and we had an investigation, the Attorney General had to say, yes, when we look at the data and when we look at the practice, it is in the culture and it is real, not imagined. So I think police will be relieved. You know what it's like? It's like back in the days of segregation. Go back to Birmingham. A lot of the white people resisted integration. But but by the time the walls came down and Black folks started eating in restaurants and buying food, listen, those white folks were happy to integrate because they liked the money.
Exactly.
And police, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 years are going to appreciate this season of reform because it takes away some of the stress. It takes away some of the anxiety. it reduces the fear. Because listen, I've ridden in a police command car on a weekend after a shooting. I rode in the command car in New Brunswick. The guys in the neighborhood had AK-47s. I saw them with my eyes. They had threatened to kill a cop. So I decided to ride with the cops and tell the guys, if you kill a cop, you may kill me. And if you have any love for me, please don't kill a cop.
Please don't kill the cop.
Right. But I also, inside that police car from midnight to 6 a.m. on a Saturday night, I came straight to church after I was with the police. I saw the tension, the stress, the fear among the police. And so we have a mutual interest in bringing about some resolution and peace between police and community. And, you know, in Franklin Township, we now have a new female police director,
yes,
Corbella Spruill from Newark, and I couldn't be happier. And she has started doing reform in Franklin Township even before there's an incident. So I think, again, we're on our way. The protest is good. I hate that people have had to die. I hate that Mr. Floyd had to die.
Yeah.
Mr. Brooks had to die. But I believe there's going to be some redemptive purpose emerging as a result of these deaths. And at least their children will grow up to appreciate that their fathers were factors in making this country a better country.
I hope and pray you're right. I'm just hoping that with all of the marching that's going on, people don't get tired. Because until we see something that is very, very visible, the work, there haven't been changes made yet.
Well, that's true. You know that in 1955, the Montgomery bus boycott lasted over 380 days.
Yes.
In 1955, 1963, that struggle in Birmingham lasted for a few weeks before it was resolved. And so you're right, we can't get tired. And those of us who are old and already tired have to just feed the young people while they look like they're getting tired. You know, I've been giving money. I've been tutoring activists. You know, I've been giving them advice on strategy because that's the role. When you get old, like me, you become more of an advisor than a leader. So I'm a leader in one sense, but more importantly, these young people need to know about the discipline of struggle and strategy and timing and the principles of nonviolence. And I'm so proud of what they're doing.
Well, you know, the other thing is, and you hit it, the old folks like us, because we're contemporaries, old people like us have got to understand what our role is now. You know, some of us want to keep holding on to all of these positions. We don't want to give anything up.
Oh,
it's
that's
time to advise and educate. And one of the things about educating, what's in a title? We are the only state in the nation where county officials, what are they called? Because my son is one of them.
Freeholders.
Freeholder. What's a freeholder?
A freeholder. Well, there are two definitions. The core definition is to be a freeholder. Back in the day in New Jersey, you had to be free, which means you couldn't be a slave.
Exactly.
And a holder of land, which meant you had to be a man, because women were not allowed to hold land. Now, there's a Webster definition that says freeholder in a generic sense means to hold land that's free of debt. But still, what that means is in the 18th century, when New Jersey and Rutgers and Princeton were forming, to be a holder of land, whether it was with debt or without debt, meant you had to be a white male.
Right.
Women could not hold land in their own names, and Black people could not. So to have every county official in all 21 counties in New Jersey be called freeholder, that harkens back to sexist, racist history. It's an abomination. And I've been preaching this for about 30 years, and now maybe someone will hear it. So I spoke to a freeholder this week, an African-American freeholder, and I said to that freeholder, maybe now, in this moment, since Aunt Jemima is gone and Ben's rice is gone.
Ben is gone and Butterworth is gone.
All that's gone. It's time for the title freeholder to
need gone.
That's right.
Absolutely. So the word on the street is you are retiring.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me about that.
I have been at First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens since November of 1990. That's 30 years. 30 years. We have built an 80,000 square foot sanctuary. We built affordable housing for 64 seniors. We rental affordable. We built affordable housing for 124 condominium owners. We built an 80,000 square foot health facility. We redeveloped the public housing to the rear of us. We've had job training programs, green job training programs. We formed the foster care and adoption agency, the only licensed Black adoption agency in New Jersey. We trained 465 families to be licensed. They took in 1,400 children and 300 were adopted. This is all in 30 years. The church has grown from 800 to 6,000. And now it's time for me to bring in a young person while the church is strong. The church, even in the pandemic, church is packed on Sunday online. Offerings are strong. Bible study strong. Youth groups are strong. So while I'm still able to walk and talk and think, it's time for me to step aside and be here to facilitate a smooth transition for a younger pastor who can do today what I did back in the day. And I'll be available to help and support, but I'm going to write books, give speeches, teach courses, and travel around the world with my wife, who hadn't seen me for 3 months in a row before this season since we got married.
Please give Donna my love. And how is Mitzi doing, your mother?
My mother is exactly the same as she was the last time you saw her.
She does not age. She does not age. I need to know what she does.
No, she does not age. She works hard on not aging. That's
right.
That's what she does. No, but I think, and you said this earlier, I don't think we should hold on to positions until we can't function any longer. I've had so many of my members say, wow, you're doing fine. That's why I'm leaving.
That's why I'm leaving.
I'm 30 plus 30 years. There's got to be some new ideas. There's got to be some new energy. These young people who are in their teens, they need to have a pastor who knows their music, who knows where they shop, who is closer to their generation than I am. I love them to death, and I like hanging around them. I know some of their slang, but we need now what they needed then. When I came here, I was 39 years old. I was preaching three times every Sunday. I was doing Bible study on Tuesday night. The church was growing. I brought innovative ideas. We were impacting the community. I led marches. I'm too old for that.
Well, and the other thing with our generation, life takes its toll.
Right.
We said goodbye, a permanent goodbye to a lot of people. And pretty soon you look in the mirror and you realize, you know what? Maybe we should do something different now.
Right. And I didn't want them to roll me out here in a wheelchair.
Right.
Because I can't even walk. So we had a search committee. They searched all over the country. They had about 240 applicants to replace me. They interviewed people, great committee. And the committee, as soon as we get back in the building, the church will have a meeting and the committee will present to the church the one person that they feel is the best out of all who had applied. And then the church will vote. If the vote is yes, then we'll start the transition. If the vote is no, they start over, look for somebody else.
Right. I want to conclude with, you mentioned about as soon as you get back in the church. And I love that saying I see from time to time, the church has left the building. Because it really has been different worshiping the way. And I believe that the churches that are going to stand will be the churches that know technology.
Well, that's true. And we started streaming, as you know, 13 years ago.
I was going to say, you've been doing it forever.
We online giving. We've had online membership for years. So we were ready for this. And we have decided that we are not reopening the church until we can be sure that we're not putting our members at risk.
Good for you.
And so we're waiting to see what happens with the vaccine. We're not in a hurry to come back in the building at all. We're doing ministry. We call our seniors who live at home twice a week. We got volunteers. We're still helping poor people. Every month we give away about $10,000 to help people with emergencies. We're still doing community work. The only thing we're not doing is gathering in the building on Sunday. But we gather online, we use Zoom, we use GoToWebinar, we use Facebook and all the social media. And we said the minute the governor ordered the shutdown, we said the building is closed, but the church is open.
There you go. Church is open. Well, Reverend Dr. DeForest B. Soaries, as we love to affectionately call you, Buster. I love you so much. Thank you for coming on LaRuelist Cafe.
Thank you. I'll be back. I
know you will. You never disappoint.
My website is dbsoaries.com.
All right, say it again. I go up on it a lot.
dbsoaries.com. And if you go to my personal website, you can get to all my social media, to my blogs. You can get to my D-Free. That's my financial program. You can get to anything I have my hands in. You can get to through dbsoaries.com.
And you've authored some books?
Oh, I've got my newest book is Say Yes When Life Says No.
Okay.
It's a book and a workbook. I've got another book, Say Yes to No Debt. I've got 2 other books, Meditations for Financial Freedom. And most of my books are around money. My next book, my next call is to my publisher. My next book is supposed to be Why Smart People Do Dumb Things. And in 5 minutes, I'll be convincing them that they should publish that as my next.
They should, and I know you will convince them. Well, I'm going to pick up Say Yes When Life Says No. Yeah. Can I get it on Amazon?
On Amazon. It's on all of my books on Amazon. Tonight. And my wife just finished her first book.
Oh, no.
It will be ready, I think, in about 3 weeks.
All right. Are you allowed to say the title yet?
Oh, yeah. It's called Oh Lord, Reflections of a Praying Mother.
And that so fits her.
It's a great book. It's a great book.
Beautiful. Well, I love you.
LaRue, thank you so much.
All right. And
we will talk. Hanging out with you. And I look forward to coming back. Keep doing what you're doing.
We're going to do it until we can't do it anymore.
All right. God bless you.
You as well. Love you.
All right.
Thanks for hanging in with us today.